For centuries, the Habsburg dynasty ruled vast empires, their lives interwoven with power, intrigue, and unfathomable wealth. But beneath the gilded facades and solemn portraits, a dark current flowed through their family tree, a chilling series of mysterious deaths that defied easy explanation. Whispers of madness, betrayal, ancient curses, and carefully orchestrated plots linger through time, echoing in the quiet halls of their former palaces. Even now, with centuries of historical research, a definitive truth remains out of reach for some of these royal demises. Prepare to step back into an era of secrets and shadows where the ends of mighty lives were often shrouded in an unsettling fog of unanswered questions. Number 7. The lingering question around Archduke Sigismund of Austria. In the mid-15th century, the Austrian lands saw the rule of Archduke Sigismund, a member of the Tyrol branch of the mighty Habsburg family. Born in 1427, Sigismund ascended to power in a turbulent period for the dynasty. He was known for his love of art and culture, his patronage bringing a vibrant intellectual spirit to his court. His early reign was marked by efforts to stabilize his territories and consolidate power. Historical records describe him as a ruler who at times faced significant challenges, including disputes with powerful neighbors and internal squabbles with his own family members. He also held a deep interest in mining, and the rich silver mines of Schwaz in Tyrol brought considerable wealth into his coffers, transforming his region into a significant economic power within the Holy Roman Empire. Sigismund's personal life was also a matter of public interest. He married Eleanor of Scotland, daughter of King James I, a union meant to strengthen alliances. Their court became a hub for artists and scholars drawing talent from across Europe. Despite his cultural pursuits, Sigismund was also a pragmatist when it came to maintaining his authority. He engaged in conflicts, sometimes successful, sometimes less so, to protect his territorial interests. He even faced a conflict known as the War of the Tyrolean Nobles, which tested his authority and demonstrated the intricate political landscape he navigated. The events leading to his demise are steeped in a mix of political maneuvering and personal circumstances. As Sigismund grew older, his health reportedly began to decline. Accounts from the time suggest he suffered from various ailments common for a man of his age in the 15th century. However, the exact nature of these illnesses often remains vague in the historical documents. By the late 1480s, his health had reportedly worsened considerably, leading to concerns about the succession and the future of his territories. In 1490, a pivotal event occurred that would directly precede his death. Sigismund formally abdicated his rule. He handed over control of his domains, specifically Tyrol and further Austria, to his cousin Maximilian, the first, who was then the king of the Romans and later became Holy Roman Emperor. This abdication was a significant moment as it unified the Habsburg lands under a single powerful ruler, a step that would contribute to the dynasty's future prominence. The official explanation for the abdication was Sigismund's declining health and his desire to retire from the burdens of governance. Contemporary chronicles often presented this transfer of power as a voluntary act, driven by practicality and familial loyalty. However, the speed with which Sigismund faded from the scene after his abdication has raised questions. He died just a short time later in 1496. While 6 years might seem like a reasonable period, the circumstances surrounding his abdication and subsequent death have fueled quiet speculation among some historians. Was his abdication truly voluntary, or was it the result of pressure from his powerful cousin Maximilian? Maximilian was an ambitious and dynamic figure, keen to consolidate Habsburg power and expand his influence. Having the wealthy Tyrolean lands under his direct control would have been a significant advantage. Some historical perspectives suggest that Sigismund, despite his love for art, was perhaps not the most astute political operator in his later years. His financial management was sometimes criticized with accusations of excessive spending. There were also internal pressures within his court and conflicts with local nobility that might have made him vulnerable, Could Maximilian have leveraged these weaknesses, or Sigismund's failing health, to persuade him to relinquish power, perhaps even with subtle coercion? The official narrative states it was a smooth, amicable transfer, but power transitions in such eras were rarely without underlying tension. The mystery deepens when one considers the lack of detailed medical records from that period. The general term, illness or declining health, could cover a multitude of conditions. Was his final decline a natural progression of his ailments, or was it accelerated by events or even treatments that were not fully understood? There are no overt accusations of foul play in primary sources. No smoking gun, suggesting poison or direct violence. Yet the timing of his abdication, his relatively rapid death in the context of medieval lifespans, and the clear benefit to Maximilian leave a faint shadow of dour dynamics of the era. The historical record, while seemingly straightforward, does not fully quench the quiet curiosity about the final days of a prince who stepped aside from power just before his demise, leaving his rich territories to a more ambitious cousin. The specific events of his death and the precise cause remain elusive, leaving room for interpretation. Number 6. The unexplained drowning of King Louis II of Hungary in Bohemia. The year is 1526, and the Ottoman Empire, a formidable force under Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent, is casting a long dark shadow over Central Europe. Standing as a precarious bulwark against this tide is the young King Louis II of Hungary and Bohemia, a Jagiellon by birth but whose fate would inextricably link him to the Habsburg dynasty. Born in 1506, Louis was thrust into kingship at an incredibly early age, inheriting two vast but often rebellious kingdoms. His early life was dominated by the immense political and military pressures of his position. He was married to Mary of Hungary, a Habsburg archduchess, cementing a crucial dynastic alliance that would play a monumental role in the future of Central Europe. As the Ottoman threat loomed, Louis, still only 20 years old, found himself facing an existential crisis. Despite warnings and the urgent need for preparation, the Hungarian nobility was deeply fractured, reluctant to unite and provide the necessary resources for a unified defense. Louis, described by some as somewhat indecisive, struggled to rally his forces effectively. Nonetheless, he took to the field, leading what forces he could gather against the advancing Ottoman army. The two vast armies clashed on August 29, 1526, on the plains near Mohacs. The Battle of Mohacs was a catastrophic defeat for the Hungarian forces, outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and with their cavalry proving ineffective against the Ottoman artillery and janissaries, the Hungarian army was utterly annihilated. Thousands of soldiers perished, and a significant portion of the Hungarian nobility was wiped out in the conflict. The defeat marked the end of an independent Hungarian kingdom for centuries, and opened the door for Ottoman expansion into the heart of Europe. But it was the immediate aftermath of the battle, specifically the death of King Louis II, that has become an enduring historical mystery. As the Hungarian lines broke and retreat turned into a rout, Louis and his retainers attempted to flee the slaughter. The official accounts state that during his desperate flight, the young king, weighed down by heavy armor, fell from his horse and drowned in a small marshy stream or bog known as Sele Stream. This explanation has been widely accepted as the primary cause of his death, an accidental drowning in the chaos of retreat. However, several unsettling details and alternative interpretations. Some accounts suggest that the stream was not particularly deep, raising questions about how a king surrounded by loyal servants could so easily perish in it. Was he simply exhausted, overwhelmed by the defeat, and his heavy armor became an insurmountable burden? Or was there more to his final moments? One theory suggests that Louis, utterly devastated by the crushing defeat and the loss of his kingdom, might have, in essence, given up. Some historical narratives speak of a deep despair among the retreating Hungarian forces. While not a deliberate act of suicide in the modern sense, His extreme exhaustion, coupled with the emotional trauma, might have led to a fatal lack of will to survive the relatively minor obstacle of the stream. Accounts from those who were with him during the retreat are often fragmented and colored by the trauma of the battle. Some reports indicate he was already weak from days of campaigning and the stress of command. Another more unsettling possibility: whispers about betrayal or abandonment. In the chaos of a routing army, loyalty could be fickle. Was it possible that in the confusion, or perhaps even by a dark design, Louis was not adequately helped, or even purposefully left to his fate? While no concrete evidence supports this, the historical context of ambitious nobles and fractured loyalties, even in the face of a common enemy, always leaves room for such grim possibilities. His death without a direct heir paved the way for the Habsburgs, through his wife Mary and her brother Ferdinand, to claim the Hungarian and Bohemian crowns, fundamentally altering the map of Europe. The precise location of his death, the depth of the water, the exact circumstances of his fall, and the actions of those around him in his final moments remain subjects of debate. The official narrative serves a purpose: a tragic but understandable accident of war. Yet the persistent questions about a young king drowning in what seemed like a minor water obstacle after a devastating defeat continue to invite speculation. Was it truly just a tragic accident? Or did despair, exhaustion, or even subtle treachery play a part in the swift, muddy end of the last independent king of Hungary and Bohemia? The murky waters of the Sele stream hold their secrets tightly. Number 5. The sudden demise of Joseph II, Holy Roman Emperor. Joseph II, the eldest son of the formidable Empress Maria Theresa and Emperor Francis I, ascended to become Holy Roman Emperor in 1765, ruling alongside his mother until her death in 1780. And then, independently. He was a quintessential enlightened absolutist, a monarch driven by a fervent desire to modernize his vast and diverse Habsburg lands. Born in 1741, Joseph was a man of immense energy, intellectual curiosity, and an unwavering commitment to reform. He famously declared himself to be the first servant of the state, believing his purpose was to improve the lives of his subjects, even if it meant challenging deeply entrenched traditions and institutions. His reign was characterized by a dizzying array of reforms: abolishing serfdom, promoting religious toleration through the patent of toleration, establishing universal education, reforming the justice system, and attempting to centralize administration across his sprawling empire. He was also a passionate advocate for the arts and sciences, a patron of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart among others. Joseph was a tireless worker, known for his relentless pace, often working late into the night and traveling extensively to personally inspect his domains. He eschewed luxury, living a relatively simple life for an emperor, and often dined alone on simple meals. Despite his noble intentions, Joseph's reforms often met fierce resistance. The nobility bristled at the loss of their privileges. The church opposed his attempts to curb its power, and even common people sometimes found his rapid changes disorienting and disruptive to their traditional way of life. His foreign policy, particularly his ambition to acquire Bavaria and his costly war against the Ottoman Empire, also proved highly unpopular and financially draining. By the late 1780s, his empire was simmering with discontent, and his ambitious projects seemed to be unraveling. Rebellions broke out in the Austrian Netherlands, modern-day Belgium, and Hungary was on the brink of revolt. It was against this backdrop of immense stress and political turmoil that Joseph II's health began to rapidly deteriorate. In 1790, at the age of 48, the once energetic emperor was dead. The official cause of his death was typically described as tuberculosis or a severe lung ailment, possibly complicated by exhaustion and stress. Historical accounts from his physicians detailed a progressive decline, marked by coughing, fever, and general weakness, symptoms consistent with advanced tuberculosis, a common and often fatal disease in that era. However, The circumstances of his sudden decline and death, amidst such intense political pressure and widespread opposition to his reforms, immediately sparked whispers and rumors that persist to this day. Joseph II had many enemies, both within his own court and among the various groups whose power he had sought to diminish. His radical agenda had alienated powerful factions who would have benefited immensely from his removal from power. Contemporary rumors of poisoning were not uncommon. In an age of limited medical understanding and sophisticated political intrigue, mysterious illnesses that struck down powerful figures often led to suspicions of foul play. Was it possible that one of the many individuals or groups who stood to gain from his death, whether disgruntled nobles, frustrated clergy, or even foreign agents, had found a way to accelerate his demise? The lack of forensic science of the time meant that such claims were impossible to prove or disprove definitively. There were also stories of him being exposed to particularly virulent diseases during his campaigns, or that the immense stress of his reign simply wore out his body prematurely. Joseph himself in his final days was reportedly aware of the public discontent and the failure of many of his grand designs. He is famously quoted as having ordered that his epitaph should read, "Here lies Joseph II, who failed in everything he undertook." This sentiment of profound disappointment may have further contributed to his physical decline. Yet the possibility that his enemies might have hastened his end remains a haunting query. The medical understanding of the 18th century was rudimentary, and many ailments could be misdiagnosed or attributed to natural causes when other factors were at play. While tuberculosis was indeed rampant, the rapidity of his final illness and the sheer political convenience of his death, for those who opposed him, continue to fuel a quiet debate. Was it truly just the natural progression of disease, or did the unseen hand of an adversary of disease, or did the unseen hand of the reforming emperor? The historical records offer a conventional explanation, but the dark undercurrents of his reign leave the door ajar to a more sinister possibility. Number 4. The bewitched King Charles II of Spain. No monarch in history embodies the tragic consequences of royal inbreeding. Quite like Charles II of Spain, the last Habsburg ruler of the Spanish throne. Born in 1661, his entire life was a testament to extreme physical and mental debilitation, a haunting echo of generations of close-kin marriages within the Habsburg family. From the moment of his birth, it was evident Charles was different. He was a weak, sickly infant, suffering from a host of ailments that would plague him until his death at the shockingly young age of 38 in 1700. His short, tortured life marked the end of the glorious Spanish Habsburg line. Charles's physical appearance was famously grotesque, a living caricature of the Habsburg jaw, but taken to an extreme. His lower jaw protruded so far that his teeth could not meet, making speech difficult and eating a struggle. He had a large malformed head, a swollen tongue, and was said to be very short for his age. Accounts from his childhood describe him as being unable to walk until the age of 4, and barely able to speak until he was 8. His mental development also lagged significantly behind other children. Though the extent of his intellectual impairment is a subject of historical debate, some sources paint a picture of severe cognitive disability, while others suggest he was merely slow and often appeared confused due to his physical handicaps and constant pain. Throughout his life, Charles suffered from a bewildering array of illnesses. He experienced epileptic fits, frequent fevers, tremors, and periods of severe depression. His body was covered in sores and lesions, and he suffered from chronic digestive problems, often throwing up his food. He was often described as looking much older than his years, resembling a frail, withered old man, even in his 20s. Despite his profound physical challenges, he was married twice. First to Marie-Louise d'Orléans, and after her death to Maria Anna of Neuburg. Neither marriage produced an heir, a fact that plunged the court into increasing anxiety about the succession. The official cause of Charles's death was not a single clear diagnosis. His death certificate listed a series of conditions, including dropsy, edema, convulsions, and a general state of decline. Given his lifelong infirmities, it was generally understood that his body simply gave out. The primary mystery surrounding Charles II's death is not who killed him, but what precisely caused his extreme debilitation and early demise, and whether it was solely due to the accumulation of genetic defects from inbreeding, or if other less understood factors were at play. Medical historians and geneticists have long pointed to the Habsburg dynasty's extreme practice of consanguineous marriages as the primary culprit. Charles II's family tree was less a tree and more a tangled shrub. His parents were uncle and niece, and he had only one great-grandparent, who was not also a descendant of Joanna the Mad and Philip the Handsome. His great-great-grandparents. This level of inbreeding significantly increased the likelihood of recessive genes carrying various debilitating conditions, expressing themselves. Modern genetic studies, while not able to examine Charles's DNA directly, have modeled the family's pedigree and demonstrated a severe coefficient of inbreeding for Charles higher than that of offspring of first-degree incest. However, the question lingers: was it just genetic load, or was there an underlying disease that exacerbated his condition? Some historians and medical experts have proposed specific genetic disorders that might explain his constellation of symptoms, such as Klinefelter syndrome, an endocrine disorder, or various metabolic disorders. Yet without definitive genetic testing, these remain educated guesses. The term bewitched, frequently used by his contemporaries to describe his condition, reflected the inability of 17th-century physicians to comprehend the biological reasons for his suffering. Superstition ran rampant, with rituals and exorcisms performed to rid him of alleged demonic influences. His autopsy, performed after his death, provided little additional clarity. It described a small, shrunken body with a single black lung, a putrid intestine, and a brain filled with fluid. While these findings pointed to severe organ failure, they did not offer a precise diagnosis. Understandable by modern medicine beyond general systemic collapse, the mystery is less about a single event and more about the tragic slow-motion decay of an entire royal line, culminating in a king whose very existence was a medical enigma. Was it simply the ultimate brutal consequence of generations of a closed gene pool? Or were there specific, unidentified diseases that hastened his end, forever leaving Charles II as the bewitched king, a living question mark on the ultimate limits of royal bloodlines? Number 3. The sudden end of King Philip I of Castile. The Handsome. In the annals of Habsburg history, few figures shine as brightly and briefly as Philip I of Castile, known to history as Philip the Handsome. Born in 1478, the son of the formidable Holy Roman Emperor Maximilian I and Mary of Burgundy, Philip was blessed with stunning looks, charisma, and a natural charm that captivated those around him. He inherited the rich lands of Burgundy from his mother, making him a powerful figure in the Low Countries. His marriage in 1496 to Joanna of Castile, daughter of the Catholic monarchs Ferdinand and Isabella of Spain, was a political masterstroke, uniting the vast territories of the Habsburgs with the burgeoning power of Spain and its New World possessions. This union laid the foundation for the immense Habsburg Empire that would dominate Europe for centuries. Philip and Joanna's marriage was famously tempestuous, but passionate. Joanna, deeply devoted to Philip, was often overcome with jealousy at his philandering. Their stormy relationship would later contribute to Joanna's tragic path to being known as Joanna the Mad. Despite the personal drama, the marriage was incredibly fruitful, producing 6 children, including the future Holy Roman Emperor Charles V, who would inherit the combined Habsburg and Spanish empires, becoming one of the most powerful rulers in European history. In 1504, the death of Joanna's mother, Queen Isabella, the First of Castile, thrust Philip and Joanna into a precarious position. Joanna was the rightful heir to the throne of Castile, but her mental instability, exacerbated by her tumultuous relationship with Philip, and the grief of her mother's death, made her rule problematic. Philip, eager to secure control of Castile's vast resources, pushed for recognition as king. This led to intense political maneuvering and a bitter struggle for power with his father-in-law Ferdinand of Aragon, who sought to rule Castile as regent for his daughter. Against this backdrop of high-stakes political intrigue, Philip's sudden and unexpected death in 1506 sent shockwaves across Europe. He was just 28 years old. The official account of his death stated that he succumbed to a fever, which he reportedly contracted after a strenuous game of pall mall, an early form of croquet or golf, followed by drinking a large quantity of cold water, perhaps exacerbated by a previous chill from a hunting trip. He died in Burgos, Castile, after only a few days of intense illness. However, the rapidity of his decline and the immense political ramifications of his death immediately fueled suspicions of foul play, specifically poisoning. At the top of the list of suspected perpetrators was his father-in-law Ferdinand of Aragon. Ferdinand had much to gain from Philip's death. It removed a powerful rival for control of Castile and allowed Ferdinand to resume his regency for his increasingly unstable daughter, Joanna, thus consolidating his own power over the entire Spanish realm. Ferdinand was known to be a cunning and ruthless politician, and the political climate of the era was rife with such dark deeds. Contemporary accounts record the shock and dismay, as well as the immediate suspicions. Many believe Ferdinand had ordered the poisoning, perhaps using a slow-acting poison that mimicked natural illness. There were whispers that Philip had enemies within the Castilian nobility who might also have wished him gone. Though Ferdinand remains the primary suspect in many historical retellings, some chroniclers of the time even noted that Philip's body showed signs that were considered suspicious, though definitive evidence was of course impossible to obtain with the medical knowledge of the 16th century. Other theories point to natural causes, emphasizing the commonality of fevers and infectious diseases in the 16th century, and the lack of proper medical care. Philip, while seemingly robust, might have had an underlying condition that was aggravated by exposure and physical exertion. Some historians argue that accusing Ferdinand is a simplification, relying on circumstantial evidence and the prevailing political climate rather than concrete proof. Yet the question of whether a vibrant young king truly died from drinking cold water after a game, or if a more sinister hand was involved, continues to hang over his brief, brilliant life. The mystery of Philip the Handsome's sudden end remains a compelling, unanswered question, forever linking his premature death to the power struggles that shaped a continent. Number 2. The grim fate of Don Carlos, Prince of Asturias. The court of King Philip II of Spain, a monarch often described as the paper king for his meticulous administration and vast correspondence, was a place of deep piety, rigid protocol, and often simmering paranoia. Into this austere world was born Don Carlos, Prince of Asturias, in 1545. The only son and heir of Philip and his first wife, Maria Manuela of Portugal. From his earliest years, Don Carlos was a troubled and troubling figure. His birth was difficult, and his mother died shortly after leaving him motherless. He was born with physical deformities, including a hunched back and a leg-length discrepancy, likely due to the prevalent Habsburg inbreeding. As he grew, his behavior became increasingly erratic and violent. Accounts from tutors and courtiers describe a boy with a quick temper, prone to fits of rage, physical cruelty, and unpredictable actions. He reportedly tortured animals, attacked servants, and expressed extreme hatred towards certain individuals, including his own father, Philip II. Some historians attribute his behavior to the physical and mental consequences of his birth, and genetics suggesting he may have suffered from a severe form of epilepsy, schizophrenia, or other neurological disorders, exacerbated by a childhood head injury he sustained when he fell down a flight of stairs in 1562. This injury led to a trepanation, skull surgery, and while he recovered, some believed it worsened his mental state. Despite his instability, Don Carlos was the heir to the largest empire in the world, and his relationship with his stern, controlling father was a constant source of tension. Philip II was a man of immense duty and self-control, qualities entirely lacking in his son. Their personalities clashed dramatically. Don Carlos frequently chafed under his father's authority, resented his restricted life, and desperately longed for a military command or a role in governance which Philip consistently denied him. The prince's increasingly erratic behavior escalated into outright conspiracies. He reportedly plotted to flee Spain, possibly to the Netherlands, where he hoped to lead a rebellion against his father's appointed governor, the Duke of Alba. He also expressed a desire to assassinate Alba, and perhaps even Philip himself. These treasonous intentions could not be ignored by the king. In January 1568, Philip II, accompanied by his guards, personally entered his son's bedchamber, placed him under arrest, and confined him to his apartments in the royal palace in Madrid. All his papers were seized and a formal investigation began. Don Carlos remained in prison for 6 months. During this period, his physical and mental health rapidly deteriorated. He refused to eat for days, then gorged himself, drank excessive amounts of iced water, and reportedly tried to commit suicide by throwing himself into a fire or starving himself. He became extremely emaciated and reportedly succumbed to a fever. On July 24, 1568, Don Carlos died in his prison cell at the age of 23. The official cause of death was attributed to his general poor health, severe fever, and his own self-destructive behavior within prison. Philip II, in a public statement, expressed sorrow over his son's death. However, the immediate and enduring mystery surrounding Don Carlos's death is whether he truly died of natural causes, exacerbated by his confinement and self-neglect, or whether his powerful and ruthless father ordered his death. The suspicion of murder by poisoning was rampant among contemporary European courts. Philip II had an undeniable motive, removing a dangerously unstable heir who posed a direct threat to his throne. The secrecy surrounding the imprisonment, the subsequent silence from the Spanish court, and the clear benefit to Philip fueled these rumors. Many believe Philip had ordered his son to be poisoned, perhaps slowly to avoid direct accusation, or that the harsh conditions of his imprisonment were designed to hasten his end. Philip II's character, while not overtly cruel, was certainly capable of cold calculation in matters of state. Conversely, some historians argue that Don Carlos's self-destructive tendencies, his long history of mental and physical illness, and a prevailing lack of effective medical treatment for such conditions are sufficient to explain his death. His erratic eating habits, particularly his overindulgence in iced water, could have led to fatal chills or stomach ailments. The head injury from his youth might have indeed caused irreversible brain damage, leading to his madness, and ultimately contributing to his physical collapse. The medical understanding of the 16th century was rudimentary, making it difficult to definitively diagnose such complex conditions. No definitive proof of poisoning has ever emerged, nor has any direct order from Philip II for his son's murder. The historical record relies heavily on contemporary accounts, which are often biased or speculative. Don Carlos's tragic story, depicted in Schiller's play and Verdi's opera, continues to captivate, leaving open the chilling question: was the prince's death a consequence of his own inherited madness and self-destruction, or was it a cold, calculated act by his own father to secure his throne? The true nature of his demise remains one of history's most enduring royal puzzles. Number 1. The Mayerling Incident, the unsolved riddle of Crown Prince Rudolf. In the quiet, snowy early morning hours of January 30, 1889, at the remote Imperial Hunting Lodge of Mayerling, nestled in the Vienna woods, a horrific and profoundly unsettling discovery. 2 bodies were found, that of Crown Prince Rudolf of Austria-Hungary, the only son and heir of Emperor Franz Joseph I and Empress Elizabeth, Sisi, and his young mistress, Baroness Mary Vetsera. This shocking event, known ever since as the Mayerling Incident, sent seismic waves across Europe and remains one of history's most enduring and tragic royal mysteries, still debated over a century later. Rudolf, born in 1858, was a complex and often troubled figure. Highly intelligent, liberal in his political views, and keenly interested in science and ornithology. He frequently clashed with his conservative father, Emperor Franz Joseph. Their relationship was strained, marked by mutual incomprehension and disappointment. Rudolf felt stifled by the strict court protocol and his largely ceremonial duties, longing for a more active role in governance and social reform. He was a vocal critic of the dual monarchy's policies, particularly its alliance with Germany, and expressed deep pessimism about the future of the Habsburg Empire. His marriage to Princess Stephanie of Belgium was unhappy, producing only one daughter. He sought solace in a series of affairs, finding fleeting happiness outside his marriage. Mary Vetsera, a beautiful and impressionable young baroness, was barely 17 years old when she became Rudolf's lover. She was infatuated with the crown prince, utterly devoted to him and seemingly willing to do anything for him. Their passionate clandestine affair blossomed in late 1888, quickly becoming the central focus of Rudolf's tormented life. The official explanation, painstakingly constructed by the imperial court and immediately disseminated to a shocked public, was that Crown Prince Rudolf had died of a heart attack. This fabricated story was soon replaced by a more palatable but still tragic narrative: a joint suicide pact. The revised official version stated that Rudolf, in a moment of despair, had shot Mary Vetsera, and then himself. This narrative, while horrific, offered a clear explanation and prevented further scandal, particularly concerning the suicide aspect, which was a grave sin in the deeply Catholic Habsburg Empire. Mary Vetsera's body was quickly and secretly buried in a remote cemetery. Her death, initially described as suicide by her own hand. Rudolf's body was prepared for a state funeral, and a papal dispensation was obtained to allow him a church burial, based on the dubious claim that he had suffered a mental disturbance. However, from the very beginning, the official narrative was riddled with inconsistencies and questions, fueling countless alternative theories that have never been definitively resolved. While the suicide pact stated Rudolf shot Mary and then himself, later examinations of Mary Vetsera's remains, conducted decades later, suggested she might have been beaten before her death. Some reports claimed her body showed signs of struggle or injuries inconsistent with a simple gunshot wound. Furthermore, the number of shots fired and the exact sequence of events remain unclear. Was it a single bullet, or were there more? Some accounts whispered of 2 or even 3 shots. Another mystery revolves around the political dimension. Rudolf's liberal views and his potential involvement in anti-government or anti-alliance plots have led some to believe Marling was not a suicide pact, but a political assassination. Could powerful figures within the court, or even foreign intelligence services, who saw Rudolf as a threat to the established order, have orchestrated his demise? Rumors circulated that he was planning a coup or had secrets that could destabilize the empire. Some theories even suggested he was planning to divorce Stephanie and marry Mary, a move that would have created an unprecedented constitutional crisis. The immediate cover-up and the swiftness with which the imperial court controlled the narrative also raised suspicions. Why the initial lie about a heart attack? Why the rushed secret burial of Mary Vetsera? The intense desire to manage the scandal and protect the dynasty's image perhaps created more questions than answers. The few servants and officials who were present at Marling were sworn to absolute secrecy, and their accounts, when they did emerge, were often contradictory or vague. Some of these individuals later spoke of hearing, arguing, or seeing evidence of a struggle, but their testimonies were never officially confirmed or were dismissed as unreliable. Furthermore, Rudolf's mental state is a critical yet ambiguous fact. While he was known to be melancholic, prone to fits of depression, and had spoken of suicide before, was he truly in a state to commit such a desperate act, or was his despair exploited? Some biographers point to his declining health due to venereal disease and morphine addiction as factors that could have contributed to his state of mind. But even if he was suicidal, did he act alone with Mary, or were there other unseen players in the isolated lodge? The Marling incident remains a chilling puzzle, Was it a double suicide born of desperate love and a tormented soul? Was it a politically motivated murder cleverly disguised? Was Neri Vetsera a willing participant in the suicide? Or was she a victim of a more complex plot? The official story imposed with imperial authority has never fully satisfied the persistent curiosity. With no definitive evidence to prove or disprove the multitude of theories, the secrets of Merling are likely to remain forever buried in the cold earth of the Vienna woods, a tragic and captivating testament to the dark side of royal power and personal despair